The diner on Maple Street. The afternoon sun filtered through the large windows of Betty's diner, casting warm golden streaks across the red leather booths. Outside, autumn leaves drifted slowly to the ground, painting the sidewalk in shades of amber and rust. Inside, the smell of fresh coffee and apple pie filled the air, mixing with the soft sounds of clinking silverware and quiet conversations. Sarah wiped down the counter with a practiced hand, her blonde hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She had worked at this diner for 3 years now, ever since she moved to this small town trying to start fresh. Every day was the same comfortable rhythm, taking orders, pouring coffee, sharing smiles with regular customers who had become like family. She liked the predictability of it all. After the chaos of her past, this simple life felt like a warm blanket on a cold night. The bell above the door chimed, and Sarah looked up from her work. A man walked in, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive charcoal suit that looked out of place in this modest diner. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his jaw was set in a tense line. But it was the little girl holding his hand that caught Sarah's attention. The child couldn't have been more than 4 years old. She wore a pink dress with white flowers, and her light brown hair fell in soft curls around her round face. Her eyes were big and curious, taking in everything around her with wonder. The man chose a booth near the window and helped the little girl climb onto the seat. Sarah grabbed 2 menus and walked over, putting on her warmest smile. "Good afternoon. Welcome to Betty's," she said gently. "What can I get you folks today?" The man glanced at the menu briefly, his expression distant. "Coffee, black, and chocolate milk for her." Sarah nodded and looked at the little girl, who was staring up at her with wide eyes. "And what's your name, sweetheart?" "Emma," the child said softly, then smiled, revealing a small gap where she had lost a tooth. "That's a beautiful name," Sarah said warmly. "I'm Sarah. I'll be right back with those drinks." As she walked away, she could feel eyes on her back. When she glanced over her shoulder, she saw Emma still watching her with that same intense gaze, while the man was already absorbed in his phone. Sarah returned with the drinks, setting them carefully on the table. "Have you decided on food yet?" The man didn't look up. "Grilled cheese for her. I'm not eating. Daddy doesn't eat much," Emma said quietly, her small fingers wrapping around the cold glass of chocolate milk. Sarah felt a small tug in her chest. There was something lonely about the way Emma said it, something that spoke of many meals eaten in silence. "Well, our grilled cheese is the best in town," Sarah said, crouching down to Emma's eye level. "We make it with 3 kinds of cheese. It's like a warm, melty hug." Emma giggled at that, and for a moment, even the man's lips twitched, almost forming a smile. Over the next 30 minutes, Sarah checked on their table several times. Each time, she noticed the same pattern. The man, whose name she learned was James from his credit card, barely spoke to Emma. He was always on his phone, his brow furrowed in concentration, lost in whatever business matter consumed his thoughts. Emma ate her grilled cheese slowly, carefully, watching her father as if hoping he might suddenly look up and see her. But he never did. Sarah's heart ached watching them. She knew that kind of loneliness, that feeling of being invisible even when sitting right next to someone. When Emma finished eating, she climbed down from her seat and walked over to where Sarah was refilling coffee at another table. The little girl tugged gently on Sarah's apron. "Yes, honey." Sarah knelt down, giving Emma her full attention. Emma's bottom lip trembled slightly. Her eyes, so big and brown, were suddenly shiny with tears that hadn't yet fallen. She leaned in close and whispered, but in the quiet afternoon diner, her words carried clearly. "Can you be my mommy?" The question hung in the air like a delicate soap bubble, beautiful and heartbreaking and impossible. Sarah felt her breath catch in her throat. Behind Emma, she saw James freeze completely. His phone clattered onto the table. The color drained from his face as he stared at his daughter, shock and pain written across his features. Sarah's hands trembled as she gently took Emma's small ones in her own. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, her own eyes burning with unshed tears. James was suddenly there, standing beside them. Up close, Sarah could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the grief written in the lines around his mouth. This was a man carrying an enormous weight. "Emma," he said, his voice rough. "You can't just ask people that." "But Daddy," Emma turned to him, tears now sliding down her cheeks, "you're always working. You never play with me. You never tuck me in anymore. And I miss." She couldn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. James closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, Sarah saw they were red-rimmed. He dropped to his knees, pulling Emma into his arms. "I'm sorry," He whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry, baby girl. Sarah stood quietly, giving them space but staying close. Other customers politely looked away, respecting this raw, private moment happening in public. After a long moment, James looked up at Sarah. Her mother passed away 8 months ago, he said quietly. Cancer. And I buried myself in work because I didn't know how to handle the grief. I thought if I just kept moving, kept busy, it wouldn't hurt so much. But I wasn't seeing what it was doing to her. Sarah sat down on the edge of the booth, her heart breaking for both of them. Grief is like that, she said softly. It makes us do things that don't make sense. It makes us run when we should stand still, and hide when we should reach out. James looked at her with surprise. You sound like you understand. I lost someone too, Sarah said simply. Different circumstances, but the pain is pain. And it's okay to feel it. You don't have to be strong every second of every day. Emma pulled back from her father's embrace and looked at Sarah with those impossibly big eyes. Will you have dinner with us? Please, just tonight. Sarah glanced at James, expecting him to refuse, to make an excuse. But instead, he nodded slowly. Please, he echoed his daughter. I think we could both use a friend right now. That evening, after Sarah's shift ended, the three of them sat in that same booth. This time, James ate. He put his phone face down on the table and didn't touch it once. Instead, he listened as Emma told him about everything she had been doing at preschool, about the pictures she had drawn, about the games she wanted to play. Sarah watched them, adding her own questions, helping to bridge the gap that grief had built between father and daughter. She didn't try to be Emma's mother. She didn't try to replace anyone. She simply offered presence, warmth, and understanding. As the evening drew to a close and the sky outside turned from orange to purple, Emma yawned widely. James picked her up, and she rested her head on his shoulder, content in a way she hadn't been when they first arrived. Thank you, James said to Sarah, and his voice was thick with emotion. I forgot how to do this. How to just be with her. You didn't forget, Sarah said gently. You were just lost for a while. But you found your way back. As they walked to the door, Emma lifted her head and waved sleepily at Sarah. Will you be here tomorrow? Sarah smiled, waving back. I work most days. You can visit anytime. And they did. Over the following weeks and months, James and Emma became regulars at Betty's diner. Sometimes they came for breakfast before Emma's preschool. Sometimes for lunch on weekends. Each time, James was more present, more engaged. The shadows under his eyes faded. His smile came more easily. Emma blossomed too, secure once again in her father's love and attention. As for Sarah, she discovered that sometimes healing isn't just something we do for ourselves. Sometimes it happens when we help others find their way out of the dark. And sometimes, the family we build isn't the one we expected, but it's exactly what we all needed. The diner on Maple Street remained the same. Red leather booths, the smell of coffee and pie, autumn leaves drifting past the windows. But for three people, it had become something more. It had become the place where a little girl's desperate question led to everyone finding their way home.